Hi, everybody. How are you?
Great. How are you?
We're great.
Oh, man, Bill. All right.
So today we're going to start talking about evaluating ROIs. I heard from a friend in the industry that one of the most vital skills in real estate is remaining calm. So how do you do this? You minimize the unknown, control what you can. We've discussed in the prior sessions that you set up your business by making the right entity choice. You silo your business accounts from your personal accounts. You learn to try to track your expenses, and you actually track your expenses. So now we have to figure out how your money works for you. You have to know how your tools are working for you. So, Joe, Brenna, where do we start? How do we do this?
Sure. Like Sharita mentioned, important part of minimizing the unknown is knowing how our money is working for us. So when we're talking about return on investment, for most real estate agents, we're just talking about the return we're getting on our expenses. How much revenue are those business expenses actually generating? And as Sharita mentioned, one of the previous courses that we did cover tracking your business expenses. And we discussed the importance of doing so, but we really didn't get into specifics. Joe, can you go into a little more detail on this? What expenses are the most important for real estate agents to be tracking and analyzing, and how often should they be doing that?
Yeah, sure. Basically, what you want to do is, again, make sure you track your expenses. You can put them into a large bucket that's not defined, but you can track marketing, let's say, in one bucket. You can have all different types of marketing involved with it. But then on a recurring time frame, say every quarter, you'll want to look into that bucket. You want to look into those expenses and put them into much more defined buckets themselves to analyze where those expenses are going. So let's see what we're talking about here. We're talking about tracking your expenses and putting it into a large bucket. Say all of your home office expenses goes into one category, or your meals with clients or other types of meals into another category, and then all of your marketing, all different types of activities to fall within marketing. So that's your broad categories as you're tracking those expenses and keeping up with them. But then on a quarterly basis, go into those accounts, go into marketing, and look at the detail within that account and say, okay, do I have, how much did I put towards direct mailers and print brochures for specific accounts and magazine ads? There's lead generation apps and Zillow ads or other social media ads. So that would be one example of looking at marketing and then going into more detail to figure out where those expenses are going. Meals. Another good thing to do with meals is take a look at your activities with the meals. Are you just meeting clients just one-on-one for a dinner or for a lunch? Or is it a larger event that's happening where you're inviting several different potential clients or existing clients within your network to come together for a specific event that's happening? Another thing to look at are your dues and subscriptions. You've got your different networking groups that you might meet with once a month. And then you might have other types of subscriptions or dues that you may have a gym membership where you go and you meet with potential clients as you're working out, just to broaden that network that you have or a country club or a swim club where you can meet with clients or again, spread out that network. So with each of these different items here, you can take a look and find out if these transactions are beneficial for yourself, or if they're, or if it's not generating any activity or actual leads with you, with your activity. Those things are taxed differently as well as we start looking at some of these things and looking at the activity. Because we're concentrating on tax as our main focus, in addition to the overall financial analysis of your business activity. Some of these expenses, like meals, for instance, meals are 50% deductible, 50% is not deductible. But if you have a company event somewhere, let's say in one of your networking venues that you have, you invite 7 or 10 of your potential clients or current clients to an event that you put on. Maybe it's something about the real estate market itself, where you're saying you want to give a little speech about where the market is going in the next 6, 12, or 18 months. And that expense, a meal is going to be supplied, and that would be considered a company event, and it's 100% deductible. So it's good to put them all in a bucket to keep up with those expenses, so you understand these the expenses that are occurring, and then again, maybe once a quarter, at the end of each quarter, you take a look at those expenses and you put them into a more detailed bucket, and that's when you'd be able to analyze them.
So, Joe, Bill has a question. Is there a list of expenses that we should be keeping track of?
Yeah, all of them.
So essentially, what we do.
I didn't even get a reaction from Bill. He just like, gotta get all of them. Okay.
Okay, so is there a list of expenses that we should keep track of?
Yeah, so when you're going through your activity, you'll want to be highlighting, if you think about it in terms of just, typical recurring expenses, you'll have marketing expenses. So you'll have, maybe direct mailers, print brochures, magazine ads, lead generation apps, Zillow ads, things like that. You'll have meals with clients, company events, things of that sort. So your general bucket would be marketing, your general bucket would be meals, dues and subscriptions, computer and software apps. If you have payroll, you'll put your expenses for payroll, you'll allocate those. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, what else we go through?
Basically, any and all expenses that are remotely related to your business, you want to keep track of. Ideally, if you have a business account, so all of that activity that's running through that business is going to be a business expense that you want to track, categorize. You have a credit card that's specific to the business that you're charging things to that credit card. Those charges you'd want to have tracked, and you'd want to keep account of those expenses. And basically, you want to continue to follow all of these expenses, keep up with them, so that you could see throughout the year how well you're doing, where the money is going, such as that. And then you could, once you are keeping up with this information, then you can do a more detailed segregation of these expenses and further categorize the expenses like marketing, further categorize them so that you could analyze them even more.
Right, I think when we're talking about like return on investment for real estate agents, those broader buckets that we really wanna like do a deep dive and analyze are the marketing, networking, those types of buckets.
Right, because those are the type of expenses that relate directly to your return. You know, these are expenses that you're going to shell out to try to get more income. You know, when you're out there, you're marketing, you're paying for these different apps that are lead generation apps. The point is that is an expense that's going out. And the goal is that you're going to receive a transaction. You're going to receive a connection. So that is a client, and you'll ultimately have some sort of sale. And then you'll receive some revenues from that expense. So that's where we're looking at. We call it ROI, return on investment, but as a real estate agent, you're investing in yourselves. So the money that you are paying out for these marketing expenses is the expense, is the investment into your business. And so the revenues you receive are the return items on the investment.
So now that they're sorting, once they have their broader marketing bucket and they break that up into, you know, what they're spending on Facebook, what they're spending on Zillow ads, etc. How do you know at that point, or how do you analyze what of those expenses are generating the most revenue or generating revenue at all? How do you determine that, or what do you suggest they might do?
Yeah, so obviously, if you don't have any way of tracking the results of, you know, the fruits of your labor here, or the fruits of your expense, if you don't have any way of tracking that, you're not going to know what's what the return is. So dealing with marketing, if you're advertising and you're going after a certain niche in this market, you want to find out from these potential clients, from these customers that give you a call after they find your ad or hear of you, somehow connected, network, when they reach out to you, make sure you have some sort of survey, some sort of way to find out, how did you find out about me? Did you find out from a Zillow ad that was posted? Maybe I posted an ad through Instagram, and you know, one of the direct mailers that went out, somebody may have picked that up and said, hey, here's, or maybe it was a network, just word of mouth. So if you have a small survey, 2 or 3 questions with your clients to find out, how did you hear about me? Then that lets you know which advertising media is working for you. And depending on, you know, the type of transaction that you get from these different marketing media areas, that should also come into play too. You might get 5 new clients from this one lead generation or advertising that came up with a bunch of rental or small starter home sales and generated $30,000 of GCI. And then you could have another marketing through a different media that got you 1 client, it generated $60,000 of GCI because it was a $3 million home sale purchase that you were connected with. So you can take a look at, all right, what's the revenue that was generated from that particular one and versus the other one to determine how well and what market you were directed to in that particular marketing advertisement or strategy. And that feeds into the next piece that you want to analyze, which is the market that I want to get into, where my marketing strategy is heading. Am I advertising? Am I spending the dollars in the right place to cover that, to market in that certain area? So if you're not getting the right clients from those marketing spends, then that may not be the correct space to spend your dollars. So there's a couple of things to look at, making sure you're getting clients from your marketing dollars that you spend and understanding the type of clients in your market that you are going for, making sure you're getting the correct group.
Yeah, I think aside from surveying your inbound leads, I think business social media accounts, I know Instagram for sure has this feature. I think other ones do as well, where you can see and get demographic information on the type of people who are interacting with your posts. So that's another way to kind of gather this information and analyze it. So yeah, so I guess in addition to tracking and categorizing the expenses, we're ultimately trying to track and understand where our revenue is generated. Is there anything else they should keep in mind with regard to their expenses?
Well, yeah, you want to be reasonable with your expenses. When you're, you don't know exactly what percentage of all of your revenues should be spent on one particular expense item or marketing expense, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is reasonable. If you're just starting out and you want to get your name out there, then you may need to spend more money up front, because obviously you got to put something in as an investment to start generating that brand that you're creating, getting recognized. But once you start overspending and simply paying for every single lead generation app that's out there, the new one that's coming out, this is the new lead generation app, this is the new lead generation that's out, you may end up being on a lot of lead generation apps that could be overlapping each other, that one or two may be generating a lot of activity for you, for potential clients, but others are not. So when you keep track of these expenses and you start looking through the detail buckets on a quarterly basis, that's when you're going to realize I have 7 lead generation apps that I'm paying for on a monthly basis, but I'm not getting a lot of returns. I'm not getting a lot of leads from half of these, from a majority of these. So I need to shut these down. And that's where you get the chance to be able to look at, understand where the money's going and what's coming out of it. And then, being reasonable so that you can shut down those wasted dollars.
We've spent a lot of time talking about marketing, but it also applies to meals with clients or company events or dues and subscriptions, right? So if you're part of a particular networking group and you paid a subscription or a due to be a part of that, and you're not participating or you're not generating any leads or the leads that you thought that you would be generating from there, going through and taking this deep dive into the expenses that you're tracking every month and your breakdowns that you're doing is a really good time to evaluate, hey, listen, am I really engaging the way I should? Is this money really spent well? Or is there something else that I could be doing? Or should I focus my efforts elsewhere? So ultimately, we did spend a lot of time discussing marketing, and because that's a big part of your industry, but there's also different things. There's also other areas that if you take a look at your expenses on a quarterly basis, and do this deep dive, you'll be able to evaluate how you're spending money and how it's working for you. So thank you, Joe and Brenna. A good session that we had earlier on was our tracking our expenses segment. So I think you can certainly go back into the portal and go back to the recorded sessions and check that out. We spent some time talking about the various buckets that you can put your activity into. And then from there, you can take those buckets and do the deep dive into there. Does anybody have any specific questions that we can address or any comments? Bill, did we answer your question earlier? Okay.
Yes, you did. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you guys. We had a great time presenting to you. We hope you enjoyed and got a little bit of help from the session. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye now.